Hi, hello. So I wanted to do a video that delves into this quote a little bit more. I want to elaborate on this line because it's not just about getting out of bed in the literal sense, right? The answer to in question of why get out of bed isn't too far from the answer in question of why do anything at all. And often the why get out of bed question is simply a specific concrete manifestation of that bigger question, right? In other words, you often ask yourself why get out of bed when you're really asking yourself why do anything at all. In other words, on the micro level, your answer to that question will shape your perspective on your day, right? I'm getting out of bed because I fucking have to and I really don't like it, and that attitude will probably carry throughout your day, or at least for the first hour until you figure out how to get rid of it. Zooming out a little bit more, it'll shape your perspective on your life, on your approach, right? On the macro scale, the reason why you get out of bed in the story you write when you do is really just an extended metaphor for why you do anything at all. Or at least I encourage you to think of it that way. It's one version, right? In that sense, everything I say here about getting out of bed can probably apply to both of those things, right? So my answer, what I have to offer you, is that line. You wake up and get out of bed because you're creating something. You have a purpose. I wrote it in 2018 when I desperately needed an answer to this question. Something that was real, that was true for me, and, helpful. So in addition to breaking it down, I would like to offer a few suggestions for when this method isn't working, because I've also been there. So first up, what do I mean by creating something? Primarily, I mean the creation of life and its purpose, which will fuel and support that life. What the fuck does that mean? Let's take the first part. You're creating your life. So I mean your story, your reality. And when I say your reality, I'm talking your perceptions, thoughts, feelings, yourself. That's not a stable thing. It is very much in flux, but still, you know what I mean? Your relationships, all of these things are all your creations, not foregone conclusions, right? And of course, that means that you can change them. Perhaps that seems obvious, but we act and speak to the contrary every day, right? So why is the fact that you're creating your life a reason to get out of bed? Well, because that creation matters. You've got something to do that matters. It impacts other people. It's part of something bigger than you, like it or not, right? And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But also, on an even more basic level, don't you want to fill and finish this life? Have a say in it before it's done for you by time and death, right? We have control over so little in this life. But our power to create and choose on the micro and macro level, on the internal and external level, it's one of the most effective alchemical tools that we have. And no, for those of you who tend to jump ahead in logic, as I sometimes do myself, no, this does not mean I'm saying we recreate objective facts or make things suit us. Many circumstances are out of our control. And it also doesn't mean that I'm suggesting that we reject reality or what is. Creation is often about creating something out of the conflict of what is and what is not. And you have to accept reality in order to do that. But anyway, I digress. What I am saying is that we all have wildly different circumstances and setups. But we also all share the fact that we were all born by no choice of our own into a context that we did not choose. And we will all die in a way that is not our choice. With the exception of suicide and its siblings, of course. So, yeah, get out of bed and create your reality before you can. Write your story, whatever the fuck you want to call it. You have limited time here. And perhaps you're thinking, yeah. Live every day like it's your last. Seize the day. Memento mori. I can see a former version of myself rolling her eyes. Cliche? Sure. Accurate and helpful as fuck? Also true. Imagine and remember your impending death. And remember specifically that it is one of the things that is out of your control. It's coming for you. And when I say that, please keep in mind that I'm not trying to instill feelings of fear of death at all. Well, certainly not, but it is happening. And I'll talk more about managing things like that later down the line. So yeah, anyway, memento mori, right? Remember you will die. You don't know when death is going to snatch you back, but you're here now. And everybody who knows how swiftly death comes, or even just those who know how one instant or seemingly small choice can invert your entire life, you don't need me to hammer this home, right? Pick your metaphor. Get up and make shit. Your life being the main and primary one. And when you can't literally make things or relationships or make anything work, it seems, remember that just getting out of bed is making something, your story, and that story matters. But first, I just want to drive this home before I talk more about why that matters. I think about my death often. I literally imagine it, and I recommend that you do too. And no, I don't think it's morbid. I think it's healthy. And when I think of my death, I think of how I'd feel if that moment came now, right? If it was coming soon, how would I feel about my life, the choice that I'm making right now? Whatever it is that I need insight on. Death is a very powerful way of putting things in their place. The importance of most interpersonal arguments, for example, they'll disappear. And in terms of getting out of bed, if you're on your deathbed, if you're lucky enough to have a deathbed, by the way, which is why we're thinking about this now, not later. Anyway, if you're on your deathbed and your life was a movie you're watching, do you want to watch the movie where the protagonist stays in bed? Creates that kind of life? I don't want to read that book. I don't want to watch that movie. Definitely not if it's mine, especially. And this is not to say that I'm anti-rest or relaxation. That and self-care should be a part of this whole scheme. And not to mention there are plenty of bed activities, by the way, that are worth staying in bed for 1 or more days. And that certainly make for a fulfilled and fantastic life. Anyway, the act of creating your reality or your particular life story involve creating your particular answer to why you get out of bed, which also shape the life story and reality that you create. That's what I'm getting at. So that brings me to the next point, which should ease the mind of anyone who's thinking, so I'm creating my story just because I'm gonna die one day? Well, sure, but it's more than that. Bear with me. The second thing that creating something refers to in this phrase is creating and living your purpose. So creating your story, i.e. living, involves creating a purpose that will drive that life and that will propel you to complete and fight for that story that you're writing, which is also part of your universal purpose as an independent human and also one that's existing with the rest of humanity. You are to create your reason to live, to get out of bed. Okay, but what the hell am I talking about when I say you have a purpose? What purpose? There's a lot to say about how and why purpose is the thing that gets us out of bed, keeps us alive, and I'll talk about it on this page a lot. I realize that I'm prefacing a lot of things, but say letty. So for now, let's stick with this simple idea. When I say purpose, I mean a reason to live. Your gasoline, your coal, what keeps you alive, even when and especially under the threat of psychic, emotional, or literal death. And more importantly, what enables you to bring yourself back improved after death. Again and again. Death, you say, perhaps. We only die once. What the fuck is this lady talking about? She really is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. No, what I'm talking about is loss, breakups, failure, illness, trauma, failures, evolutions, all of the deaths, right? And by the way, one of the top secret little things about death and life is about learning how to die before, you die. So we'll talk about that later. So yeah, having a purpose will get you out of bed when you listen to it. It's your created and chosen reason for being here and not just waiting to die. We often hear that we're all here for a reason, and I believe that that's true. And we all have certain things that lead us to that. It's just that I believe that we create the reason that we're here. It's not given to you. With all this in mind, it's of course not surprising that I argue that creating your answer to why you get out of bed or live at all is one of the most important things that you could do. The most powerful and effective, because that answer will likely be your purpose or lead you to it or be part of it, right? And having that is an incredibly powerful tool, right? A reason to live, one that's born out of you, that you make out of what matters to you, that will evolve with you. You can harness death, turn injuries into upgrades. And I feel like it sounds like I'm selling you something, but I am not, except maybe this idea. And I believe in it. Maybe you will. Anyway, this idea should be bigger than you, this purpose. It's something outside of you. The less self in it, while still being driven by your core, the better. And that's really hard to do, by the way. But you have to come up with your own personal reason why. Someone can't give it to you, like I said. If you ask me, also drop the harmful idea that you're born with your purpose. You gotta make it. The great news is that once you have it, it's one of the very few things in this life that can be taken from you. If you don't find a purpose, I believe you will destroy yourself, others, or wait to die, which isn't much different. If you're in the I don't or won't because it doesn't matter, it's all made up, or so basically fuck purpose and creating shit camp, well, I have a counter. If it doesn't matter, then why not do it anyway? Create a purposeful life, that is. You certainly won't die any sooner or survive the meaninglessness or absurdity that you believe is here by staying in bed and doing nothing. Why not do something? Especially because it doesn't matter. Maybe something that really means something. Is that not freedom rather than a curse? And this is a bit tangential, but if you find yourself resisting creating something because it's hard or scary, remember that everything in life is a risk, and you're going to die anyway, not to belabor the point. Captain Death over here. But why not take the risk of living for something that makes it worth it for you? Hopefully that's not making other people miserable, doing something crappy, but there are so many reasonable reasons to play life coolly and controlled, or even ignorantly and aimlessly. But that method still won't stop problems or death or the random cruelties of the universe, but it will stop you from living a fulfilled, purposeful life. A fulfilled life by nature, by definition, risks itself. Risk is required to gain, and it risks more and more in proportion to the value of the reason or goal. So pick a big one and fucking believe in it. Take the risk of living for something that makes all this insanity worth it for you and community. And there will be fulfillment. There'll be no question of what's the point, why do anything. It'll be why the fuck not, we're already here, so why not get out of bed and do something that's fucking interesting and maybe ends up making things better too. And sure, life itself is the goal, but I think we can do better than that. Personally, I'm interested in improving it, but that's me. To each their own. Now, what if this concept is not working? What if you feel far away from your purpose or desire to do or make or be anything at bloody all? Maybe you don't feel capable. Maybe it's all too overwhelming. What if you haven't found your purpose yet or you don't believe in it? Maybe you don't give a shit if the life story you create is, tantamount to nothing. Well, with that in mind, I have a couple additional approaches that could be used in addition to or instead of the stuff that I've already talked about. So one, what if you're thinking that you don't have a purpose yet? I'll talk more about this later, but I can tell you for now that I just gave you one, right? Creating your life story and your purpose. Creating something out of your time here, something wonderful, hopefully, before you snatch back into the nothing, everything, the neverything, right? Two, I realize that creation, someone who's aiming for it is exhausting. And I need to remind myself of this pretty often. It's one of the reasons I say a lot of these things I'll be sharing with you. Creation is a superpower, and perhaps that's why it's so exhausting, right? And please know that even though I'm putting forward this idea, I'm not saying that any of this is going to be easy. You're not going to wake up every morning with the attitude of a motivated Care Bear, right? I can guarantee you, in fact, that you probably won't. But I can also guarantee that the fruits of alchemy, of the act of transforming base metal, or in our circumstance, a lot of the garbage that comes out of you at life, transforming that into gold or advantage or actually improvement takes some work. And that, of course, involves, creating a purpose in your life, right? So with that in mind, what if all of this feels too heavy? Or you're prone to lay pressure on yourself like some sort of butter you can't get enough of, which I think is cheese, by the way. I would recommend the following. Keep in mind that this is a creation, and why I'm saying that is have fun with it. Remember what a creation is. Remember what it was like when you were a kid and you would make shit. There wasn't a bunch of pressure around it, right? So yeah, give yourself and life a chance to be different than you're likely dreading, right? Like a story, just follow it and see where it goes. Just do one thing, make one act. get up and brush your teeth, and maybe you'll find yourself back in bed, but you gave yourself a chance to do something. And I would rather read that story, and I'd rather have that story than the one where I just stayed in bed and decided I already knew what was going to happen. And I can tell you, I've had a weird life. You don't know. Anyway, another way to help you and have fun with it and release the pressure is to literally lower the stakes. This whole thing, life, is an experiment, right? Which you're doing for possibly the first time, right? Reframe it as an experiment rather than something that you ought to do and have to do, right? And it means all of this stuff. Again, the idea of play. And lastly, if not for you, then for everyone else. You have a role here in the human community, or whatever you want to call it. You and the life and purpose you create or don't create are pieces of this humanity machine, right? And as part of the deal of being alive here, even if that piece is small. Your purposes and all of this stuff don't have to be big. They need to be real. That's one reason that the fact that you're creating something can help you get out of bed, because whether you subscribe to it or not, what you do impacts the world around you. You're part of this machine, a part of its success and failure and everything in between. You know, we all bleed and we all know fear, and I do think we owe something to each other. A lot of people talk about our kids inheriting the earth and all of that, and of course that's true, but I'm also talking about strangers. You know, if you can't do it for you, do it for someone else, and that includes strangers and people who won't know if you died today. We die every day, and people don't know shit about your life or your death, but it doesn't mean that you didn't have an impact. It also doesn't mean that those people don't matter. Causality dictates that your life did have an impact. As a result, your life isn't just about you. And also to balance that, while your role is important here, balance that out by staying away from things like ought. I would recommend that, because if you tell yourself I ought to do this because I have a role or I should do it, I do think it's something that we, do for each other because out of love and respect. But the more you use ideas of oughts or shoulds, they tend to enforce ideas of guilt, shame, and inadequacy. They're not your friends. Try and stay away from the moral imperatives. All right. That concludes this ramble. I think I'm going to post some other related things to it because, believe it or not, there's still more in my brain about this. You know what I was also thinking? But if you say purpose with a little bit of an accent, it sounds like porpoise, like a porpoise. So I'm thinking of creating a character called the Purpose Porpoise, which is just a porpoise that talks to you about purpose. So, thoughts? Okay. Until another time. Also, okay, one more thing. If this isn't just about me rambling at you, if you have thoughts, especially if you have something that helps you get out of bed, or you want to share your purpose, which would be really cool and interesting, or criticisms or counters or any of those things, I'd really love to hear them in comments or whatever. And if you think this could help other people please share it with them. Any and all input is welcome conversation, right? So, okay, bye-bye.